Before we continue, please be aware that this video is based solely on publicly available information, including court documents and verified news reports. All details presented are factual and derived from credible sources. Now, let's return to the discussion. There is a brown steamer trunk sitting on the front lawn of a women's dormitory in Denton, Texas. It has been there since early morning. The sun has been up for hours. Students have walked past it. Staff have walked past it. The Texas summer heat has settled in thick and heavy over the grass and the brick buildings and the whole quiet campus. And the trunk just sits there, unclaimed, untouched, waiting for the woman who packed it, who labeled it, who paid a cab driver $1 to bring it here for her. A woman who has not come back. Nobody knows yet that she is not coming back. Nobody has said the word missing. Nobody has called the police. It is just a trunk on a lawn on a summer morning. But inside that small, ordinary image, a suitcase that nobody is coming to collect, is the beginning of a story that Texas has never been able to finish, a story that is still open today. June 1st, 1948, a young woman named Virginia Carpenter, everyone who loved her called her Jimmy, boards a train in Texarkana, Texas. She is 21 years old. She has a striped chambray dress on, a white hat, and a pair of red platform shoes that she is proud of. She has a brown steamer trunk packed with everything she will need for the summer. She has a matching makeup case, a black pasteboard hat box, and a plan she's been working toward for years. She is going to Texas State College for Women in Denton. She is going to enroll in a summer course, and then in the autumn she is going to begin training as a laboratory technician, and that is going to be the beginning of the life she has been building towards since she was a girl watching her father get sicker in a house where medical science could not find a cure. She boards that train with everything ahead of her. 6 hours later, she steps out of a taxi cab onto a college campus, and she is gone. No body was ever found. No one was ever charged. And for more than 75 years, Virginia Carpenter's mother, the Denton police, the Texas Rangers, and the entire state of Texas have been asking the same question. What happened to Virginia? There was a cab driver with a deeply suspicious alibi, whose own wife eventually admitted she had lied to protect him, and who was later found to have been missing from his home for 4 to 5 unexplained hours on the very night Virginia disappeared. There was a boyfriend questioned 12 separate times. There were 2 unidentified men standing beside a cream-colored convertible outside her dormitory who have never been named. Not in any investigation, not in any decade since 1948. There was a serial killer already loose in Virginia's hometown who had killed 5 people 2 years before she left on that train. And there were human bones found inside a wooden box more than 200 miles away. Bones that matched her height, her physical condition, and her age, but not her dental records. This is Texas's oldest cold case, and tonight we are going to walk through every single piece of it. But before we get to what the cab driver's own wife eventually confessed to police, and what she said he did every single year on the anniversary of the night Virginia vanished, stay with me. Because this story begins long before that dormitory lawn, long before that train, and long before the trunk that sat in the Texas sun waiting for a woman who never came back. Before we go back to the beginning, I want to put 3 questions in front of you. 3 questions that have haunted every detective, every Texas Ranger, every cold case researcher, and every person who has ever spent serious time with this file. The first is this: who were the 2 young men standing beside that cream-colored convertible outside Brackenridge Hall on the night of June 1st, 1948? Virginia Carpenter appeared to know them. The cab driver, Jack Zachary, Hideous said she walked right up to them without hesitation and said in the easy, familiar tone of someone greeting a friend, "Well, hi, what are you doing here?" Those were the last words any confirmed witness ever heard her speak, and the 2 men she said them to have never been identified. Not in 1948, not in 1957, not in 1970, not in 1998, not today. 2 real people stood on a real campus driveway on a real summer night and watched a young woman get into their car. And they have been invisible for 75 years. The second question is about Jack Zachary. He was the last confirmed person to see Virginia Carpenter alive. He drove her to that campus. He was described by Denton police as a bootlegger, a part-time mechanic, and an automobile trader with a known reputation for violence and a well-documented pattern of abusive behavior toward women. He passed 2 polygraph tests. His wife, Alma, confirmed to police that he had been home with her since 10 o'clock on the night Virginia disappeared. The investigation moved on from him, but here is the question that never moves on. Why did that same wife, nearly 10 years later, walk into a police station and tell officers she had lied? Why did she say that Jack Zachary had not come home until somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning, leaving 4 to 5 completely unaccounted hours on the specific night a 21-year-old woman was last seen climbing out of his cab? And what does it mean that every year on June 1st, Jack Zachary would drive from wherever he was living to Denton, Texas, was specifically to buy the newspaper that ran its annual story about the unsolved disappearance of Virginia Carpenter? The third question is the one that gets underneath your skin when you sit with it long enough. Virginia Carpenter grew up in Texarkana, Texas. In the winter and spring of 1946, just 2 years before she packed that trunk and stepped onto the Texas Special, a predator moved through her city and killed 5 young people in lovers' lanes. He wore gloves. He left almost nothing behind. He was never caught. The press called him the Texarkana Phantom Killer. And Virginia Carpenter was not just a Texarkana resident during those murders. She personally knew 3 of the 5 victims, people she had a relationship with, people whose families knew her family. 3 of the Phantom's 5 victims were connected to Virginia Carpenter's life. And then, 2 years later, she was gone too. Was Virginia's disappearance connected to the same darkness that had already reached into her world once before? By the time this story's finished, you will understand exactly why that question has never been answered, and why the people who have carried this case for decades believe the answer is somewhere out there, waiting to be found. Before we go any deeper into the investigation, let us know in the comments where you are watching from right now. We love hearing from our community all over the world. Drop your city, your state, or your country below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now, let us go back to the beginning. Let us go back to Texarkana. And let us meet Virginia Carpenter properly, because she deserves far more than a cold case number. Mary Virginia Carpenter was born on January 25th, 1927, in Texarkana, Texas, on the border of Texas and Arkansas, in a city that sat on the dividing line between 2 states and carried the personality of both. Her nickname, Jimmy, had stuck since childhood. The kind of name that tells you something about a person before you even meet them. Jimmy was not a sit-still kind of young woman. People who knew her described her consistently as happy-go-lucky and polite, warm and easy to talk to, the kind of person who could make a stranger on a train feel like an old friend within the first hour. She had long dark brown hair and brown eyes, stood 5 feet 3 inches tall, and weighed about 120 pounds. She walked with a slight limp, the result of a prior bone infection in her right hip that had left one leg fractionally shorter than the other. She also had an appendectomy scar on her abdomen, and on the morning she left for Denton, she was recovering from a severe case of sunburn. These are the kinds of details that investigators use to identify remains. They are also the kinds of details that remind you, forcefully, that this was a flesh and blood human being, not a file number and not a legend. Virginia's early life was built around 2 things: family and ambition. Her father had been seriously ill for years, and Virginia watched the medical system struggle, strain, and ultimately fail to cure him. That experience shaped her in a way that was quiet but permanent. She decided early on that she wanted to work in science, not because it was fashionable or lucrative, but because she had sat beside a sick father and watched the limits of what medicine could do in the 1940s. And she wanted to be part of the generation that pushed those limits further. She initially considered nursing, but the physical demands of nursing, the long shifts, the constant movement, the hours on her feet, were not compatible with her right leg. So she adjusted her plan, thoughtfully and without self-pity, and aimed herself toward laboratory work instead. She would become a laboratory technician. She would work in a research environment, contributing to the science of medicine from a different angle. The goal was the same, only the path changed. Funny, and that kind of adaptability The ability to look honestly at a situation and redirect without losing momentum tells you everything about who Virginia Carpenter was. After her father passed, Virginia stayed close to home and took care of her mother, Hazel. She worked whatever she could find. First came a position at a local clinic. Then she took a job at an insurance firm because it paid better, and Virginia was nothing if not practical about money. She saved steadily, not dramatically, not quickly, but with the patient, grinding determination of someone who knows exactly what they are saving for. She first enrolled at Texas State College for Women for the 1945 to 46 school year. Then she had to step back. Her mother needed her, and the money ran low. She attended Texarkana Junior College while she rebuilt her finances. And then, by the summer of 1947, she had enough. She walked out of the insurance firm for the last time in August of that year. The following month, she re-enrolled at Texarkana Junior College to prepare herself for the next step. By the spring of 1948, the plan was clear and in motion. Attend TSCW for the summer session. Use that coursework to qualify for the laboratory technician training program beginning in the autumn. Every piece of the puzzle was in place. All she had to do was get on the train. There is one additional detail about Virginia's personal life that occasionally surfaces in the case files, and that deserves a moment of honest attention. Before Kenny Branham, Virginia had been engaged to another man, a relationship that she had ended herself just weeks before the wedding was supposed to take place. Nobody who knew Virginia thought that decision reflected instability or emotional crisis. Quite the opposite. It reflected the same clear-eyed self-knowledge that characterized everything else Virginia did. She had looked at the relationship, looked at herself, and decided that it was not right. And she had ended it, even though ending an engagement weeks before the wedding in a conservative Texas city in the 1940s was not a small or painless thing to do. After that, she had found her way to Kenny Branham, a young man from Dallas who cared about her with obvious sincerity. Virginia's mother, Hazel, had some quiet reservations about the match. She once said that she loved Kenny for his good qualities, but could not quite picture the two personalities living together in long-term harmony. But there was no doubt that Kenny was devoted to Virginia in the summer of 1948. He was the first to notice she was missing. He was the first to make the call. He was questioned 12 times and passed every test, and by every indication, he was a man who had genuinely lost someone he loved. Now, before we follow Virginia onto that train, there is something we cannot skip, because to understand her disappearance fully, you have to understand the city she came from and what it had already been through. Texarkana in 1946 was a city consumed by a terror that most American communities have never experienced. When in a 10-week window between February and May of that year, a predator struck 5 times in Lover's Lanes across the Texarkana area. His victims were young people. His attacks were swift, devastating, and carried a signature of controlled, deliberate violence that told investigators this was not random or opportunistic. This was someone who planned, who prepared, and who knew exactly what he was doing. 5 people lost their lives. 3 more survived, but carried the trauma of those attacks for the rest of their lives. The killer wore gloves. He left almost no usable physical evidence. He disappeared after each attack as completely as if he had never existed. Law enforcement from across the region descended on Texarkana. The FBI was involved. The Texas Rangers worked the case. Every lead was followed, and nothing, not one solid, a prosecutable piece of evidence was ever developed against a single-name suspect. The press gave the killer a name that stuck, the Texarkana Phantom Killer. He has never been identified with certainty. The fear that the Phantom Killer left behind in Texarkana was not the kind that fades after a few weeks. It settled into the community at a cellular level. People who had never locked their doors began locking them. Parents kept their children inside after dark. The comfortable, unspoken assumption of safety that most small American cities carry as part of their daily texture simply evaporated. And Virginia Carpenter breathed all of that in. She lived in it. She read the newspapers. She felt the fear in conversations at school and at church and at the dinner table. But here's the detail that pulls Virginia's story out of the general atmosphere of Texarkana dread and makes it personal and specific in a way that has never been fully explained. Virginia Carpenter did not merely live in the city where the Phantom Killer struck. She personally knew 3 of the 5 people he killed. 3 individuals with whom she had a real, specific relationship were among his victims. People whose names she knew. People she may have sat beside at a school event or seen at a gathering or known through the overlapping social circles of a mid-sized Texas border city. 3 of the Phantom's 5 victims were connected to Virginia's life, and 2 years later, Virginia herself was gone. Nobody has ever been able to say definitively that this is coincidence. On the morning of June 1st, 1948, Virginia Carpenter got dressed in her striped chambray dress, put on her white hat, and laced up her red platform shoes. She packed her brown steamer trunk, her matching makeup case, and her black pasteboard hat box. She said goodbye to her mother Hazel and walked to Union Station in Texarkana, where she boarded the Texas and Pacific Texas Special, train number 31, headed for Dallas with a stop in Denton. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The Texas summer sun was high and hot over the platform. The train began to move, and as the station slid away behind her, Virginia had every reason, every rational, evidence-based reason, to look forward to what was ahead. She had done the work, she had paid the price, she had saved the money and made the plan and said her goodbyes and bought her ticket. The hardest part was behind her. What was in front of her was a beginning. She was 21 years old and the rest of her life was waiting in Denton, Texas. She had absolutely no way of knowing that what was actually waiting for her was something else entirely. Something that would erase everything she had built and leave her mother standing at a window for the next 32 years, waiting for a knock on the door that never came. Somewhere on that 6-hour train ride from Texarkana to Denton, Virginia Carpenter fell into conversation with a fellow passenger named Marjorie Webster. Marjorie was a middle-aged school teacher, also heading to Texas State College for Women from Texarkana, also enrolling in a summer course, also making the same journey for her own professional reasons. The 2 women talked on and off across the long stretch of East Texas, out to the flat land and the pine trees and the small towns passing outside the windows. Marjorie later told investigators that Virginia had been completely normal throughout the trip. She was pleasant. She was engaged. She was looking forward to the summer ahead. There was no sign of anxiety, no talk of problems, no indication that anything was weighing on her. Just 2 women from the same city sharing a train ride to the same campus, talking the way strangers do when they discover they have something in common. When the Texas Special finally pulled into the Denton station that evening, around 9 o'clock, they stepped off the platform together and arranged to share a taxi to the dormitories. The driver who picked them up was a man named Edgar Ray Zachary. Everyone in Denton called him Jack. With that cab ride, Jack Zachary became the most important, the most scrutinized, and the most permanently suspicious figure in the entire Virginia Carpenter case. Zachary first drove to the Fitzgerald dormitories to drop off Marjorie Webster, and it was there, as the cab slowed and Marjorie prepared to get out, that Virginia made a discovery that changed the sequence of everything that followed. She realized she had never confirmed whether her steamer trunk had arrived safely at the Denton train station after being sent separately. She asked Zachary how much it would cost to drive her back to the station to check on it. He told her 75 cents. Marjorie Webster, being thoughtful, asked Virginia if she wanted company. She offered to ride back with her. And then Virginia, with the easy confidence of a 21-year-old who has been managing her own affairs for years, shook her head and said the words that would be quoted in newspaper articles and police reports for the next 7 decades. "No, I'll go alone. I'll be all right." With that, Marjorie Webster got out of the cab, and Virginia Carpenter rode away into the Denton evening alone. It was the last time Marjorie Webster ever saw her. It was the last time anyone outside of Jack Zachary's cab, and whoever was standing beside that convertible, ever laid eyes on Virginia Carpenter. At the train station, Zachary and Virginia were told that her trunk would not arrive until the following morning. Zachary offered to come back the next day and pick it up himself and bring it to the dormitory. Virginia agreed, and they drove back toward the Texas State College for Women campus, arriving at Brackenridge Hall, the women's dormitory, at approximately 9:30 in the evening. Virginia got out of the cab. She paid Zachary $1 and handed him her trunk ticket so he could retrieve her luggage in the morning, as promised. And then, before Zachary could pull away, before the transaction was even fully complete, Virginia Carpenter walked directly toward a cream-colored convertible that was parked near the curb outside the dormitory. Two young men were standing beside it. One was tall, the other was described as short and stocky, chunky as the original account put it, and Virginia, according to Jack Zachary, walked toward them with recognition in her step and said, in a comfortable, unhurried voice, "Well, hi. What are you doing here?" She told Zachary the two men would help her with her luggage, and Zachary drove away. That is the last confirmed sighting of Virginia Carpenter. She never walked through the doors of Brackenridge Hall. She never signed her name in the dormitory register. She never checked into a room, never unpacked a single item, never attended a single class session, never enrolled in any course at Texas State College for Women. She never called her mother to say she had arrived safely. She never called Kenny Branham to tell him she had made it. The woman who had worked and saved for years, who had rebuilt her plans twice, who had kissed her mother goodbye just that afternoon on a train platform in Texarkana, ceased to exist in the documentary record of the world the moment Jack Zachary's cab pulled away from Brackenridge Hall. There is one additional detail that surfaces in the case files that has never been definitively settled. Reports circulated early in the investigation that a campus night watchman had witnessed Virginia get out of the cab and get into the convertible with the two young men. Police Chief Jack Shepard publicly denied that any such night watchman existed or had said any such thing. But the fact that this account surfaced, circulated, and never fully disappeared suggests that someone somewhere near that dormitory driveway may have seen something on the night of June 1st, 1948, and what they saw may have been recorded, denied, or buried in a way that has never fully come to light. The morning after Virginia disappeared, Jack Zachary returned to Brackenridge Hall, exactly as he had agreed, with Virginia's steamer trunk from the train station. He carried it to the front lawn of the dormitory and set it down and left. Nobody came to get it. The trunk sat on the front lawn of Brackenridge Hall for 2 full days. In the Texas summer heat, uncollected, unexamined, waiting. After 2 days, dormitory staff finally carried it inside to the office. The Dean of Women at Texas State College for Women, a woman named Mrs. Mattie Lloyd Wooten, later sat down with Hazel Carpenter and told her something that had never happened before in all her years overseeing the dormitory. She said it was the first time, the only time, in her experience, where that luggage had been delivered to the building and its owner had never come to collect it. Every other student had come. Every other student had retrieved her belongings, unpacked, begun her life at the school. Only Virginia Carpenter's trunk sat unclaimed on that lawn. Only Virginia had not come back to pick it up. Mrs. Wooten's observation was not just a piece of campus trivia. It was, in a precise and devastating way, a description of what Virginia's disappearance actually was. A life interrupted at the exact moment it was supposed to begin. For 3 full days after Virginia stepped out of that cab, the world went on without anyone registering that anything had gone wrong. Hazel Carpenter was at home in Texarkana, assuming her daughter was busy settling into campus life. Kenny Branham was in Dallas, expecting to hear from Virginia when she had a free moment. The Texas State College for Women had no reason to be concerned. The summer term had barely begun, and a new student not yet formally checked in was not unusual. But by Friday, June 4th, 3 days after Virginia's arrival, Kenny Branham had tried multiple times to reach her by phone and received nothing in return. No answer at the dormitory, no message passed along through the front desk, nothing. He contacted Hazel Carpenter. Virginia's mother immediately called the school, and the school told her something that struck her like a physical blow. Texas State College for Women had no record of Virginia Carpenter ever enrolling. She had not checked in. She was not registered. As far as the college was concerned, Virginia had never arrived at all. Hazel called friends. But she called relatives. She called every person she could think of who Virginia might have gone to see. None of them had heard from her. The silence was total and absolute. By midnight, Hazel Carpenter was on the phone with the police. At 12:30 in the morning on Saturday, June 5th, Hazel Carpenter called the Denton authorities and the local police to report her daughter missing. She also called the Texarkana Police Department, and the response she received from the Texarkana Police is one of the details in this case that, once you hear it, does not leave you. A police officer told Hazel Carpenter to just go to bed. They said they would get on the case in the morning. Just go to bed. Her daughter had been missing for 4 days. The last person to see her was a cab driver with a questionable reputation. She had disappeared from a college campus without a trace, without a phone call, without a word to anyone who knew her, and the police told her to go to bed. Hazel Carpenter did not go to bed. She could not sleep. Instead, she and a friend named Mrs. Lucille Bailey got into a car at 2:10 in the morning and drove the more than 60 miles from Texarkana to Denton, arriving in the darkness of a Texas night to begin searching for her daughter herself. That act, a mother getting in a car in the middle of the night because no one else was going to help, is a small portrait of Hazel Carpenter that tells you everything about the woman who would spend the next 32 years of her life refusing to let Virginia's case go cold. 8 days after Virginia's last sighting, on June 9, 1948, a small article ran in the Amarillo Globe-Times under the headline, "Officers Seek Missing Girl." The article was terse and factual. A 21-year-old woman from Texarkana had arrived in Denton on June 1st. A cab driver had dropped her off near her dormitory. She had been seen speaking to 2 young men in a convertible. No one had seen her since. The article gave her physical description: dark brown hair, brown eyes, 5'3", about 120 pounds, slight limp, a striped chambray dress, a white hat, and red platform shoes. It was a brief article, a few paragraphs, but it was the opening of a search that would span the next 5 decades, consume nearly $250,000, and involve law enforcement agencies from Texas to Arizona to Arkansas to Mississippi. And it was the first time that the name Virginia Carpenter, Jimmy to the people who loved her, was printed in black ink in a newspaper as a missing person, as someone who had been there and was now simply gone. The reported sightings began almost immediately. On June 6th, just 5 days after the disappearance, a gas station attendant in Aubrey, Texas, a small town 10 miles east of Denton, came forward after seeing Virginia's photograph in the newspaper. He said that a yellow convertible with Arkansas license plates had stopped at his station on June 3rd. 2 days after the disappearance, the car held 2 young men and 2 young women. One of the women, he said, resembled Virginia Carpenter closely enough that he had remembered her face. Police went to Aubrey and investigated. They found nothing that could be confirmed. Then, on June 11th, a ticket agent named Mrs. Rogers at the bus station in DeQueen, Arkansas, reported that a young woman matching Virginia's physical description had come through her station on the evening of June 11th. 10 days after the disappearance, the woman had been pacing and appeared nervous, chewing her lip, asking about local hotels. A young man had appeared and joined her, and they had left together. Mrs. Rogers was later able to pick out a photograph of Virginia from a lineup. And then, in the way that so many things in this case happened, she later doubted her own identification. The certainty softened into uncertainty, and the lead dissolved. There were more sightings. In July of 1948, a report came in from Tucson, in Arizona, more than 1,000 miles from Denton, describing a young woman at a local diner who resembled Virginia closely in both appearance and clothing. Investigators compared the description to known photographs. The identification could not be confirmed. In January of 1949, a woman named Gladys Bass from Chirino, Texas, contacted investigators to say she had picked up a female hitchhiker weeks earlier who had told her that her name was Virginia and that she had run away from a situation in Denton. Bass provided as much detail as she could remember. Investigators followed up carefully. The woman Bass had given a ride to turned out to be someone else entirely. In the weeks and months following the disappearance, sightings came in from South Texas, from Louisiana, from Arkansas, and from Mississippi. Each was investigated. Each collapsed. And behind all of them, behind every sighting that evaporated, every lead that went cold, every trail that faded before it could be followed to a destination, the investigation kept circling back to 2 men, a boyfriend named Kenny Branham and a cab driver named Jack Zachary. Now here is a chapter in this investigation that most people who follow this case have never heard about, because it sounds almost too strange to be real, and yet it is documented in the actual police files. On June 26, 1948, 25 days after Virginia disappeared, A tip came in from Jackson, Mississippi. A clerk at the Heidelberg Hotel in Jackson told investigators that a man who worked in a traveling theater company had registered at the hotel on June 6th, 5 days after Virginia's disappearance, in the company of a young woman. And the clerk saw Virginia's photograph in a newspaper and said that the woman with the theater man looked exactly like her. Officers from Denton rushed by train to Jackson, Mississippi to follow up in person. When they arrived and showed the clerk Virginia's photograph, he confirmed it. "Yes, that was the woman," he said. "That was her." The Denton officers went to the hotel room and pounded on the door and announced that the occupant was under arrest. The theater man inside, a grade B Western film star named Lash LaRue, known across America in the late 1940s for his bullwhip-wielding cowboy roles, through what investigators' reports described with admirable plainness as a fit. He swore the woman with him was his wife. His wife confirmed it. Her mother confirmed her confirmation. The Denton officers returned to Texas with the case still unsolved. Lash LaRue was ruled out. Virginia Carpenter was still missing. And somewhere in the files of the Denton police, there is a report about the time 2 Texas officers knocked on a movie star's hotel room door looking for a missing girl and found nothing but an alibi and an angry man with a bullwhip. The formal investigation into Virginia Carpenter's disappearance launched on June 5, 1948, the morning after Hazel called the police. Denton County Sheriff Roy Moore coordinated with the Denton Police Department and reached out almost immediately to the Texas Rangers for additional investigative support. The response, by the standards of 1948, was substantial. Search parties organized rapidly and fanned out across the landscape surrounding the Texas State College for Women campus and the broader Denton area. Boats were put on the waterways. Search dogs were deployed. Airplanes swept the terrain from above. Photographs of Virginia were printed and distributed to law enforcement agencies across the entire country. A logistically complex undertaking in 1948 that required real effort and real resources. A reward fund was established and eventually climbed to $3,000, which was a significant amount of money at that time. Texas Ranger Captain Lewis C. Rigler, one of the most experienced investigators in the state, became the central figure in the Rangers' involvement with the case, and he would remain connected to it for the rest of his professional life and beyond. 2 suspects emerged from the early investigation with enough force to dominate the next several decades of inquiry. The first was Kenny Branham, Virginia's boyfriend from Dallas. In any disappearance investigation involving a young woman, the closest male companion is an inevitable early focus, and the Denton investigators were thorough about it. Kenny Branham was questioned 12 separate times over the course of the investigation. He was given a polygraph test. He passed. His account never wavered in any significant way across 12 separate interviews. He consistently told investigators that Virginia had been happy, that she had been looking forward to school, that she had no reason to run away, that she had no secret relationship pulling her somewhere else, that there was no jealous ex-partner in the picture, no hidden debt, no crisis in her life that she had concealed from the people who loved her. He was eventually cleared, not because investigators completely stopped wondering about him, but because no physical evidence, no credible witness, and no inconsistency in his account ever gave them anything to work with. The evidence that existed pointed away from Kenny Branham. It pointed towards someone else. That someone else was Jack Zachary. Edgar Ray Zachary was 45 years old at the time of Virginia's disappearance. He was a big, rough-edged man with little formal education and a reputation in Denton that did not speak well of him. The police files describe him plainly: a bootlegger, a part-time mechanic, and an automobile trader. He was known among people in the community as someone prone to violence. He was described, by multiple sources and over multiple years, as a man with a documented pattern of abusive behavior toward women. He was the last confirmed person to see Virginia Carpenter alive. He was in her physical presence on the night she vanished. He had driven her back to the train station and back again, which means Virginia had been in his cab, alone with him, for an extended period of time on the night of her disappearance. Police investigated him intensively. They searched his person for physical signs of a struggle, scratches, bruising, anything. They found nothing. They questioned him multiple times. He was cooperative. In July of 1948, approximately 6 weeks after Virginia vanished, Zachary submitted to a polygraph examination. He passed. His wife Alma confirmed to police that he had been home with her since 10 o'clock on the night of June 1st. Without physical evidence, without a body, without a witness to what had happened after his cab pulled away from Brackenridge Hall, the investigation could not move against him, but it never stopped watching him. 3 years into the investigation, in August of 1951, something happened that is worth pausing on because it tells you exactly how seriously investigators continue to take Jack Zachary as a suspect, even in the face of past polygraphs and a seemingly solid alibi. Officers dug up Jack Zachary's backyard, not a search of his property, a full excavation of his backyard, in the search for physical evidence connecting him to Virginia Carpenter's disappearance. What they found was the bones of a dog, nothing more. No human remains, no evidence of any kind. Zachary was not charged. The investigation continued. And then in 1957, 9 years after Virginia Carpenter had vanished from that dormitory driveway, the alibi that had been protecting Jack Zachary since the night of June 1st, 1948, fell apart. Jack Zachary was arrested that year for attempted sexual assault on a woman. The victim ultimately chose not to pursue the charges, and Zachary was released without prosecution. But that arrest brought Zachary back into direct contact with law enforcement, and shortly after, his ex-wife, Alma, now remarried, now living a separate life from the man she had once covered for, went to the Midland police and changed her story. Alma told police that on the night of June 1st, 1948, Jack Zachary had not come home until somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning. Not 10 o'clock, as she had originally told investigators 9 years earlier. 2 or 3 in the morning, 4 to 5 hours unaccounted for. 4 to 5 hours during which a 21-year-old woman who had last been seen getting out of his cab had simply ceased to exist. Alma told police that her ex-husband had convinced her, had pressured her, to tell police he was home by 10. She said she had lied because he had told her to. And then she said something that no one who has ever looked at this case has been able to shake. She told investigators that every year on June 1st, every single year without exception, Jack Zachary would drive from wherever he was living to Denton, Texas. He would go to the offices of the Denton Record-Chronicle, which ran an annual story on the anniversary of Virginia Carpenter's disappearance, and he would buy a copy of that day's paper. His ex-wife said he became nervous and uneasy around those anniversaries. She said she believed he had something to do with the girl's disappearance. He had driven to Denton every year to read about his own potential crime, and she had watched him do it and said nothing for almost a decade. Police brought Zachary in for additional questioning in light of his ex-wife's recantation. He submitted to a second polygraph test. He passed again. Without physical evidence, without a body, without a crime scene, without a witness to what happened after he drove away from Brackenridge Hall, investigators could not build a prosecution. Jack Zachary was never charged in connection with Virginia Carpenter's disappearance. He died in Midland, Texas in 1984. He never confessed to anything. He never publicly addressed his ex-wife's account. He never explained those 4 to 5 missing hours. He never stopped driving to Denton every June 1st to buy that newspaper. He took whatever he knew with him when he died and left behind nothing but a recanted alibi, a pattern of violence toward women, and one of the longest-running cold cases in Texas history. While the suspect investigation ground forward and backward in that frustrating, inconclusive loop, the physical search for Virginia had expanded to a scale that was extraordinary for a missing person case in the late 1940s. In the investigation's total cost would eventually reach nearly $250,000, a figure that reflects not just the duration of the search, but the seriousness with which law enforcement across multiple agencies and multiple decades continued to pursue it. The ground around the TSCW campus and throughout the Denton area was searched multiple times. Waterways were examined. Abandoned properties were investigated. Every reported sighting, regardless of how thin the evidence behind it seemed, was followed up in the field. And human remains were found, more than once, in the surrounding area. In 1949, bones were discovered in Denton County, examined and ruled out. In 1958, more remains surfaced. examined and ruled out. In 1960, additional skeletal material was recovered, examined and ruled out. Each time, the discovery carried a brief, terrible charge of possibility, and each time the forensic examination concluded that the remains were not Virginia Carpenter, and the case went cold again. Throughout the late 1940s and into the 1950s, the investigation was carried forward by the people who had the most to lose from it going cold. Hazel Carpenter never stopped working alongside police. She drove to Denton and back so many times that the route became a kind of second geography of grief. The same roads, the same landmarks, the same flat Texas landscape between the city where she had raised her daughter and the city where her daughter had vanished. She chased rumors. She followed leads. She contacted officials. She wrote letters. She submitted information. She submitted herself to the exhausting, heartbreaking loop of hope and disappointment that defines the life of a parent who has lost a child to an unresolved crime. She went through periods where she tried to convince herself that Virginia had suffered some kind of amnesia, that she was alive somewhere, just unable to remember who she was or where she had come from, unable to find her way home. She had Virginia's life story published in the Denton Record Chronicle on the second anniversary of her disappearance, hoping that someone, somewhere, who might have seen a woman matching Virginia's description might recognize details of her history and make the connection. The year before that, Hazel had been convinced her daughter was dead. The year after, she was hoping again. That oscillation between knowing and hoping, between grief and refusal to grieve, is what unresolved loss does to a person. It does not allow a destination. It only allows the ongoing. On June 9, 1955, exactly 7 years after Virginia Carpenter had last been seen stepping out of a cab in Denton, Texas, the state of Texas declared her legally dead under Article 5541 of the Texas Civil Statute. Texas Ranger Louis Rigler, who had spent more time and more personal energy on this case than perhaps any other single investigator, concluded formally and personally that Virginia had been killed on the night of June 1st or shortly after. He found no credible evidence of any kind that Virginia Carpenter had voluntarily disappeared. There was no secret lover. There was no hidden plan to start over. There was no debt, no threat, or no reason in the landscape of her actual life that could explain a voluntary vanishing. There was only a young woman who had packed her bags for a future she had earned, who had stepped out of a cab and said hello to two men she apparently knew, and who was then simply gone from the world. In an interview late in his life, Ranger Rigler said something that people who work this case still quote. He said he had always hoped that someday Virginia would call him and say, "Mr. Rigler, this is Virginia Carpenter. I just wanted you to know I'm all right." And then he said quietly and without embellishment, "By God, I'd like that to happen before I die." It never happened. Louis Rigler died without that call. Hazel Carpenter died in 1980 without it either. When in the fall of 1959, 11 years after Virginia Carpenter stepped out of Jack Zachary's cab and was never seen again, a discovery was made approximately 200 miles away from Denton that sent a current of renewed painful urgency through the entire investigation. A 3-foot by 1-foot wooden box was found in a smokehouse on an abandoned farmhouse property 7.5 miles northeast of Jefferson, Texas, in Harrison County. Inside the box were human skeletal remains, female skeletal remains. Investigators began the careful, methodical process of comparison, working through every physical characteristic that they had on file for Virginia Carpenter against what the bones could tell them. The gender matched. Virginia was female. The height estimated from the bones matched. Virginia was 5 feet 3 inches tall. And the age range was consistent. And then, the detail that made every investigator in that room go completely still, the skeletal remains showed a deformity, a specific, unusual condition, a bone abnormality in the right hip, consistent with a prior infection. Virginia Carpenter had walked with a limp for most of her life because of a prior bone infection in her right hip that had left one leg marginally shorter than the other. The remains in that wooden box had the same condition, the same deformity, the same hip, the same leg. For one terrible suspended moment, it seemed as if the search might finally be over. 11 years of sightings that went nowhere. 11 years of reward money sitting uncollected. 11 years of a mother driving between Texarkana and Denton and back, to chasing leads that always dissolved before she could reach them, and now in a wooden box in an East Texas smokehouse, possibly the answer. The bones were documented, the physical characteristics were cataloged, the case files were pulled and compared, everything lined up. The gender, the height, the age, the hip deformity, and then they brought in Virginia Carpenter's dental records. Because dental comparison, in forensic science, is one of the most reliable and unambiguous methods of positive identification. The investigators laid the records against the skull, they compared the dental structure point by point, and the teeth did not match. The dental records did not match. The remains in that box, despite every other physical similarity, despite the matching height and gender and age and the specific, one usual condition in the right hip, were not Virginia Carpenter. They belonged to someone else, someone with their own story, their own disappearance, their own family somewhere wondering what had happened to them. Virginia was still missing. The box had held someone else's tragedy, not hers. This was not the only time investigators examined remains potentially linked to Virginia Carpenter. Bones had been found in Denton County in 1949, and again in 1958, and again in 1960. Each time, forensic examination had ruled out a connection. The Jefferson discovery in 1959 was the most compelling of all of them. The closest any physical evidence had ever come to matching Virginia's documented physical characteristics. And even it fell short at the dental comparison. The investigation absorbed each of these disappointments and continued. But as the 1960s arrived and the case entered its second decade without resolution, the raw investigative energy of the early years began to thin. The search parties were not going out anymore. The reward fund had largely been returned to its donors. The file was still open, but the active investigation had wound down to periodic check-ins and the occasional tip that came in when someone read about the case in the newspaper. And somewhere in Texas, in Denton, possibly or nearby, someone was living with the knowledge of what had happened to Virginia Carpenter on the night of June 1st, 1948, and was carrying that knowledge as privately and carefully as a stone carried in a closed fist. Here is where the phantom killer connection deserves serious, careful attention, not as a dramatic flourish, but as a genuine investigative avenue that was opened and never fully closed. After Virginia's disappearance, investigators in both the Carpenter case and the Texarkana phantom killer investigation looked for evidence connecting the two. They found nothing definitive. No physical link, no named suspect who appeared in both case files, no forensic connection. But the circumstantial weight of Virginia's personal relationship with three of the Phantom's 5 victims has never been fully accounted for either. The Phantom killer, as far as anyone knows, was never caught. He was alive in 1948. He was living somewhere, possibly in Texarkana, possibly somewhere nearby, possibly somewhere much farther away by then. The possibility that the predator, who had already moved through Virginia's social circle twice before she left for Denton, had some connection, direct or indirect, to what happened to her on that campus has never been provably eliminated. It remains, as investigators have described it, an unresolved circumstantial thread in a case made entirely of unresolved circumstantial threads. In 1970, something happened in the Virginia Carpenter investigation that offered the possibility of a resolution, and then withdrew it abruptly and completely in a way that has left investigators and researchers frustrated ever since. 2 detectives from the Denton Police Department quietly reopened the Carpenter case. They said almost nothing publicly, but years later, a former Denton police officer named J.N. Pruitt gave a statement to a local newspaper that is perhaps the most haunting single sentence in the entire history of this case. He said the 1970 investigators had a specific suspect, not a theory, not a general direction of inquiry, but a specific named individual, a man who had been a prominent figure in Denton at the time of Virginia's disappearance, who had been college age in 1948, and against whom investigators believed they had enough evidence to make an arrest. According to Pruitt, the investigators were prepared to charge this man. They were ready. There was only one thing standing between them and a prosecution, one condition that could not be overcome, no matter how determined they were. "We had a suspect," Pruitt said, "that we would arrest if we could just find the body. They never found the body. The suspect has never been publicly named. The file from that 1970 reopening contains almost nothing of substance. No supplemental investigative reports, no formal written conclusions, just fragments of old documentation. Someone, it seems, walked free, and the absence of a body was the wall that protected them. May of 1998, 50 years after Virginia Carpenter stepped out of a taxi cab in Denton, Texas, and walked toward two men in a convertible and said hello, and was never heard from again. A man described as being in his 70s walked into the Denton police and told investigators he had information about her case. He said he had been close to the people allegedly involved. He said he knew who had done it. Two men, he told police, both now deceased, had attacked and killed Virginia shortly after her arrival on campus on the night of June 1st, 1948. He said her body had been buried in a dam near a stock tank on the grounds of what had been Texas State College for Women, now Texas Women's University. The Denton County Sheriff's Office listened to him. They assessed his credibility. They concluded that this was not a crank. The sheriff himself said publicly that the informant appeared to have been genuinely close to some of the people he claimed were involved. The two suspects he named, he said, were both dead. Police coordinated with the university. They brought in excavation equipment. They dug up a section of the TWU campus in May of 1998. What they found was a leather glove, a rubber boot, animal bone fragments, nothing more. Virginia Carpenter was not there. It would be a mistake to dismiss the 1998 tip as simply another false lead in a case full of false leads. Even though, on its surface, it produced the same empty result as every other excavation and investigation before it, the sheriff's own assessment of the informant was that this was a man with genuine insider knowledge, not a stranger who had constructed a theory from newspaper articles. That means one of two things. Either the information he had was accurate, but the exact location had shifted or changed over 50 years of campus development and property modification. Graves are not permanent markers, and land changes over half a century in ways that can make a precise location nearly impossible to pinpoint from memory. Or the account he had been given, or had witnessed, had been distorted over time in the way that all secrets distort over decades, shaped by the need of the people holding them to make the story manageable, to make it something they could carry without being destroyed by it. Either way, the tip represented the closest the investigation ever came, in its last active chapter, to a direct named account of what had happened to Virginia. And it produced nothing. The ground gave nothing back. The two men named as responsible were already dead, and Virginia Carpenter remained missing. What do we actually know, with reasonable confidence, without speculation, based on the documented record, about what happened to Virginia Carpenter on the night of June 1st, 1948? Honey, we know she arrived in Denton by train at approximately 9 o'clock in the evening. We know she shared a cab with Marjorie Webster, who described her as normal and happy throughout the journey. We know that cab was driven by Edgar Ray Jack Zachary, a man with a known reputation for violence and abusive behavior toward women. We know that Virginia went back to the train station with Zachary to check on her trunk, that they returned to Brackenridge Hall at approximately 9:30, and that Virginia got out of the cab and walked toward two men in a cream-colored convertible who she appeared to recognize. We know she said, "Well, hi, what are you doing here?" We know Zachary drove away, and we know that Virginia Carpenter never appeared anywhere in the documented world after that moment. No enrollment, no phone call, no letter, no confirmed sighting, nothing. We know that Zachary's ex-wife eventually admitted she had lied about his alibi, placing him at home by 10 o'clock when he had actually returned sometime between 2 and 3 in the morning, leaving 4 to 5 hours unaccounted for. We know that Zachary was charged with attempted sexual assault 9 years after Virginia's disappearance. We know that he drove to Denton every June 1st to buy the newspaper that reported on the anniversary of her disappearance. We know that in 1951, police dug up his backyard in search of physical evidence and found the bones of a dog and nothing else. We know that he passed 2 polygraph tests. We know that he died in 1984 without ever being charged. We know that in 1970, 2 Denton detectives reopened the case, and according to a former officer, were prepared to arrest a prominent Denton man if only they had a body. We know that in 1998, a man in his 70s with apparent insider knowledge named 2 deceased suspects and pointed to a specific burial location on the university campus. We know that the excavation of that location found nothing, and we know that on June 9, 1955, the state of Texas declared Virginia Carpenter legally dead, and that her mother Hazel died in 1980, still waiting for someone to bring her daughter home. Lewis Rigler, the Texas Ranger who had given more of himself to this case than perhaps anyone else, was still alive in 1985. A reporter asked him about Virginia Carpenter that year, and Rigler said that he was not surprised the case was still drawing attention. And he said it might have been the most famous missing person case in Texas. And then he said what he always said when anyone asked him, that he had always hoped Virginia would call him, that she would pick up a phone somewhere and say his name and tell him she was all right. He said it with the quiet, specific ache of a man who had been hoping for the same thing for 37 years and was still hoping, even though he knew better. Even though the evidence he had gathered over decades told him clearly that the call was never coming, the capacity to hold both of those things at once, the knowledge and the hope, the evidence and the refusal to fully surrender to it, is something that this case seems to produce in almost everyone who spends serious time with it. It is the quality that makes it impossible to put down. Because Virginia Carpenter deserved the call to come. She deserved the answer. She had done everything right. She had worked and saved and planned and persevered. And someone took all of that away from her on a summer night in 1948 and has never been made to answer for it. Virginia Carpenter was 21 years old. She was wearing a striped chambray dress, a white hat, and red platform shoes. She had dark brown hair and brown eyes and a limp that had never slowed her down, and a dream of working in a science laboratory in honor of the father she had watched medicine fail to save. She had a mother who drove through the Texas night at 2 in the morning because the police told her to go to bed. She had a boyfriend who was questioned 12 times and never broke because there was nothing to break. She had 3 cousins who, as of the last documented reporting on this case, were still alive and still hoping for resolution. She had a trunk that sat on a dormitory lawn for 2 days in the Texas summer heat, waiting for the woman who never came to collect it. She had a case file that is still technically open in the Denton County Sheriff's Office. She had a life that was interrupted at the exact moment it was supposed to begin. And she had a name that has been spoken. In newspaper articles, in police reports, in the conversations of researchers and investigators, and people who stumbled across her story and could not let it go for more than 75 years. She deserved a better answer than silence. She has not gotten one yet, but the case is still open, and the possibility of an answer still exists, even now, even after all this time. And there is one final detail I want to leave you with, because I think it says more about this case than any single piece of investigative evidence or any named suspect. Every year on June 1st, the Denton Record-Chronicle ran a story about Virginia Carpenter. Every year on June 1st, Jack Zachary drove to Denton and bought a copy of that paper. His ex-wife said he got nervous around those anniversaries, that he became uneasy, that she believed he had something to do with the girl's disappearance. Think about what it means to do that, to mark the anniversary of a young woman's vanishing by making a dedicated journey to the city where it happened, to buy the paper that tells the story year after year, to read about what may have been your own actions, rendered as a cold case mystery in black ink on newsprint. That is not the behavior of a man with a clear conscience. That is the behavior of a man who is checking, who is watching, who is making sure the story still ends the same way, with no names, no charges, no body, who is making sure the absence of a body is still doing its job. It did its job for 36 years, until 1984, when Jack Zachary died in Midland and took whatever he knew with him, and Virginia Carpenter was still missing, and the trunk was still on the lawn in a metaphorical sense that this story has never been able to leave behind, waiting, still waiting, for a woman who packed it with care and a purpose and a future and never came back to claim it. We have been through all of it tonight, from the train platform in Texarkana to the dormitory lawn in Denton. From Jack Zachary's crumbling alibi to the wooden box in Jefferson with the bones that almost matched. From the 1970 investigators who were ready to make an arrest to the man in his 70s in 1998, who pointed to a spot on the campus and said she is there, and she was not. From Hazel Carpenter driving through the Texas night at 2 in the morning because the police told her to go to bed, to Louis Rigler sitting in a chair in 1985 still hoping the phone would ring. We have covered every documented lead, every confirmed detail, every unanswered question in 75 years of the oldest cold case in Texas. And at the end of all of it, after $250,000 and a legal declaration of death, and 2 polygraph tests, and a recanted alibi, and a backyard excavation that found a dog, Virginia Carpenter is still missing. Still officially open, still waiting for the answer that the people who loved her never received. Now I want to hear from you. In the comments right now, tell me who you believe was responsible for what happened to Virginia Carpenter on the night of June 1st, 1948. Was it Jack Zachary, the cab driver with the 4 to 5 missing hours and the annual anniversary drives to buy that newspaper? Was it the unnamed prominent Denton man that the 1970 investigators were ready to charge if only they had a body? Were the 2 men in the convertible connected to the Texarkana Phantom Killer's world of violence? Or is there an angle to this case, something in the details we covered tonight, that points you somewhere entirely different? Drop your theory below. I read every single comment. And this is one of those cases where a fresh perspective genuinely matters. If this story moved you, if Virginia Carpenter's name means something to you now that it did not mean an hour ago, please hit the like button. It takes 1 second, and it genuinely helps this kind of storytelling reach more people. It helps Virginia's story reach more people. It keeps her name circulating in a world that has mostly forgotten her, which is the smallest and most concrete thing any of us can do for a woman who has been waiting for justice for more than 3/4 of a century. And if you want to be here for the next story, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell so you are the first to know when the next video goes live. Because what is coming next is another case from the same era, another disappearance, another community that closed ranks, another file that sat untouched for decades while someone somewhere was living with what they had done. If you thought the Virginia Carpenter case had layers, wait until you hear the next one. It will stay with you. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for giving Virginia Carpenter your time and your attention and your care. She packed her bags for a life she had earned. The least we can do all these years later is say her name and mean it. Virginia Mary Jimmy Carpenter, born January 25th, 1927 in Texarkana, Texas. Last seen June 1st, 1948 in Denton, Texas. Declared legally dead June 9th, 1955. Never found. Texas's oldest cold case still open.